Join us on the program right now. Frank Borelli, editor-in-chief of Officer.com. How you doing tonight, Frank?
I am good, Cam. How are you?
I am very well. Thanks for coming on the program.
It's always a pleasure, sir. You know that.
So the FBI comes out today with the annual look at crimes in 2009, and good news: violent crime declined for the third year in a row. This in a year, I would note, Frank, that in which we saw perhaps more private gun sales, or more gun sales to American citizens than in any other year. People were talking about 2009, President Obama being the salesman of the year for the firearms industry. We had a huge surge in gun ownership in 2009. Coincidentally or not, violent crime dropped at the same time.
Of course, and I'm sure that President Obama's upset he hasn't got his commission check.
I'm sure he is. Now the gun control advocates, Frank, they would say that that this doesn't make any sense. How can it be that you added more guns in the hands of more Americans, and yet there were fewer violent crimes committed by these same Americans?
Well, I'd point out a couple of things for those good folks. Number one, they'd hate to admit it because it goes against the argument they've been trying to make for decades. But number two, if you look at the information released by the FBI, it shows that the uniform crime reports represent information from almost 18,000 law enforcement agencies. Reality, though, is that there are 40,000 law enforcement agencies in North America. So there's a large portion that aren't reporting that represent huge geographic areas but small population areas. Forgive me, as my brain's running slow. And when you think about that, that means country folk, people who live in open areas, really rural areas, who, by and large, throughout history have had to be more self-dependent and take care of themselves. And I have a feeling that if there was a way to do the study, you might find out that that's where a lot of those weapons were bought. People that knew they had less dependency on law enforcement and were having to take care of themselves more and more. So as much as these numbers show a reduction, and I'm not going to argue with the FBI, that's usually a bad idea. It's not complete numbers. It's less than half of the actual law enforcement agencies in the country, and that's not a negative comment on it. It's just reality.
Right. Okay. So, but looking at the numbers that we have here, last time you saw a violent crime rate this low, 1973. Last time you saw a homicide rate, which again fell from 5.4 to 5 per 100,000, was 1964. Frank. Mm-hmm. To me, this seems very, very good that the violent crime rate is going down. And again, maybe kind of counterfactual, not just in terms of the gun issue. I know the New York Times, and the others, they can't understand how it is that more guns could equal less crime. But we're also in the midst of some pretty challenging economic times, and wasn't sort of the standard line of thinking is that when the economy goes south, crime rates go north?
Well, especially when you're looking at how many agencies these days are cutting manpower, and excuse me, with the budget cuts and prisoners being released early and everything, people, including myself, are having to eat a little crow. I've been predicting these crime rates were going to go up in the last year or two. I'm really glad to see that's not the case.
Yeah, and again, as I said earlier in the program, there may be some cities out there, there may be some states out there that are seeing the crime rate go up, as opposed to looking at the national average. But for instance, Chicago, Illinois, they're dealing very clearly with some pretty brutal gang violence right now. I don't think you can make a direct correlation to, all right, well, the cities that have really tough gun laws, they're the only ones that have seen their violent crime rate go up. I don't think that is the case. But again, it seems to me that if you're looking for some sort of correlation between the effectiveness of gun control laws or the number of gun control laws on the books and the violent crime rate in a given city or a given state, you're really not going to find a positive correlation in terms of more gun control laws mean less crime.
No, you're not. And we need to remember, too, like you said, that these numbers are averages, and they represent those almost 18,000 different reporting entities. And when you have places where crime is supremely low or has dropped off drastically due to whatever program or higher gun ownership, that's going to offset crime increases in some of the larger cities like Chicago and Los Angeles and New York, places like that.
Yeah. Now, are you concerned at all, Frank? Oakland, California, for instance, because of their layoffs, they've now told residents there, if you're the victim of a burglary, you come home and somebody's broken into your house, don't call the police because we can't come. If they've left your computer, go online and file a report. Otherwise, go down to the local police department and fill out a report in the kiosk up front. Are you worried that this is going to lead to fewer crimes being reported?
I am, but my bigger concern, in all honesty, is that, people come home, they find a window broken open, they find a door standing open. How do they know whether or not the bad guy's still in the house? That was one of my bigger concerns, is you come home and you have to check your house. Now, you have to assume they're not there, or you have to assume that they are and act accordingly before you even file the report. I do think people, if the police aren't going to come out and take fingerprints and take crime scene photos and at least do the basic foundation for an investigation that could be done, then the people are thinking, why call the cops anyway? I'm going to call my insurance company, get the damage fixed, and life goes on. And, why report it if nothing's ever going to come of it? And that's what some people are going to think. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so is there anything else that you've taken away from these FBI numbers that we haven't talked about tonight, Frank?
Not so much. They show trends, and I think trends are kind of like the climate. It comes and it goes up and down, and people can read into statistics. You can manipulate them in some ways. The only other observation I would make is that all these crimes get reported. We need to remember, too, that it's the most heinous crime that is counted, even if multiple crimes are committed at the same time. So if somebody's to come up to you and rob you, assault you, do damage to your car, whatever, only one of those crimes is going to get reported, and it's whichever one is highest on the UCR list. So there are a lot of crimes that aren't included in the UCR simply because they're not rated as high as the primary crime that gets reported.
Okay. All right. Well, Frank, as always, sir, glad you could join us on the program tonight. We're going to miss you in Albuquerque, New Mexico next week at the National Police Shooting Championships. One of these days we're going to drag you with us.
I would have a good time. If I may, sir, I kicked off a new project. As you spoke of positive change earlier.
Yes.
We've got a website up now called AboveDirt.com. If you're happy to have woken up above dirt today, go check it out. It's motivational thought to keep a positive outlook.
AboveDirt.com. All right, now what happens if we actually sleep in our basement below ground level?
You're still not looking up at the roots of the daisies, and that's the point.
All right. Excellent, Frank. Thank you so much, sir. We'll look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Thanks, Cam. Have a good one.
You too. Frank Borelli with Officer.com.